The story begins not with grand speeches or military campaigns, but with personal ambition and miscalculation. Aristagoras, ruler of Miletus, found himself in a desperate situation. He had convinced Artaphernes, the Persian governor of Sardis, to mount an expensive expedition against the island of Naxos, promising that conquering this one island would open the door to all the Cyclades and even Euboea. The Persians committed 200 ships and substantial forces to this venture. However, the expedition failed catastrophically. During the campaign, Aristagoras quarreled with Megabates, the Persian commander, over a relatively minor disciplinary matter. In revenge, Megabates secretly warned the Naxians of the coming attack. When the Persian forces arrived, they found the Naxians well prepared behind strong walls. After 4 months of fruitless siege, the expedition withdrew in failure. A dangerous gambit. Aristagoras now faced ruin. He had made expensive promises he couldn't keep, had failed militarily, and had made enemies among the Persians. It was at this precise moment that a message arrived from an unexpected source. Histiaeus, the former ruler of Miletus, now detained at the Persian court in Susa. Histiaeus had found a clever way to communicate secretly with Aristagoras. He shaved a trusted slave's head, tattooed a message on his scalp, waited for the hair to grow back, then sent him to Miletus with instructions to shave his head again. The message was simple but momentous: revolt against the Persian king. Histiaeus's motivation was purely self-serving. He hoped that rebellion in Ionia would prompt Darius to send him back to the coast to restore order. But for Aristagoras, already facing disaster, rebellion seemed his only option. He called his supporters together, and they decided to revolt. The spread of revolution. Aristagoras moved decisively. First, he orchestrated a dramatic political transformation, pretending to give up his own despotic power and establishing equality in Miletus, a calculated move to win popular support. Then he seized the Persian commanders who had participated in the Naxos expedition, delivering them to various cities to curry favor. The response was remarkable. City after city overthrew their former Persian-backed rulers. When the Mytileneans received their former despot, they stoned him to death. Other cities let their former rulers go, but the result was the same. Persian control over Ionia collapsed like a house of cards. Yet Aristagoras understood that Ionia alone could not withstand Persian power. He needed allies from mainland Greece. The quest for Greek support. Aristagoras traveled first to Sparta, then the most powerful Greek military state. He came prepared with a bronze tablet engraved with a map of the known world. Standing before King Cleomenes, he presented an enticing vision. The barbarians are not valiant in fight, he argued, and they have wealth beyond measure: gold, silver, bronze, embroidered garments, beasts of burden, and slaves. He traced out the geography on his map, describing how the Persians fought with bows and short spears, wearing trousers and caps, implying they would be easy opponents for Spartan hoplites. He painted a picture of unimaginable riches waiting in Persia, from the Lydians with their gold and silver to the ultimate prize, Susa, where the great king kept his treasures. Cleomenes asked a critical question. How far was it from the Ionian coast to the Persian capital? Aristagoras made a fatal mistake. Instead of dissembling, he told the truth. It was a 3 months' journey inland. Cleomenes immediately ordered him to leave Sparta before sunset. The Spartans would not march their army 3 months from the sea. Desperate, Aristagoras tried bribery. He followed Cleomenes to his house and began offering money:
10 talents, then 20, escalating to 50 talents. But it was Cleomenes' young daughter Gorgo who saved her father from corruption, crying out, "Father, the stranger will do you harm if you do not leave him and go." Cleomenes took his daughter's advice and departed. Aristagoras left Sparta, having gained nothing.
Aristagoras next turned to Athens, a city recently freed from tyranny and still finding its democratic footing. The Athenians had their own reasons for hostility toward Persia. They had sent envoys to Sardis years earlier who had foolishly promised submission to the great king, a decision that haunted them. Moreover, the Athenians and Milesians shared ancient bonds of kinship. The Athenians voted to send 20 ships to support the Ionian Revolt. Herodotus later wrote that these ships were the beginning of evils for both Greeks and barbarians, a judgment proven true by the decades of war that followed. The Eretrians also joined, sending 5 ships to repay an old debt to Miletus. With this Greek support, the rebel forces marched inland. The Burning of Sardis. The combined Ionian and Greek force achieved initial success beyond anyone's expectations. They marched up from Ephesus and took Sardis, the great Persian provincial capital, almost without resistance. Only the citadel held out. But then disaster struck, not through Persian military action, but through accident. Sardis was largely built of reeds and thatch. When a soldier set fire to one house, the flames spread uncontrollably through the entire city. As the flames raged, Lydians and Persians fled to the marketplace and the banks of the river Pactolus, trapped by the flames spreading through the streets. The Greeks and Ionians, seeing the enemy gathering in desperate circumstances and Persian reinforcements approaching, withdrew. They were caught at Ephesus by a Persian force and suffered a severe defeat. Among the dead was Eusaldes, the commander of the Eretrians, a man celebrated by the poet Simonides. The Athenians, having suffered this defeat, refused all further appeals for help and sailed home, but the revolt was far from over. The revolt spreads. Despite losing Athenian support, the rebellion expanded dramatically. The Ionians captured cities along the Hellespont, including Byzantium. Much of Caria joined the revolt. Most remarkably, Cyprus rose in rebellion under Onesilos, who seized power in Salamis and brought most of the island into the revolt. The Persians responded with overwhelming force. In Cyprus, a combined land and sea operation crushed the rebellion. Onesilos died fighting heroically against the Persian commander Artibius. In one memorable moment, his Carian shield-bearer cut the legs from under Artibius's war-horse, bringing down both horse and rider. But individual heroism couldn't overcome Persian numbers. Within months, Cyprus was reconquered. The Persian counter-offensive. 3 Persian commanders, Darius, Hyames, and Otanes, led separate armies to crush the revolt. Darius swept through the Hellespont cities, taking them one by one before turning toward Caria. The Carians debated strategy. Should they fight with the Meander River at their backs to prevent retreat and force themselves to fight to the death, or should they position the Persians with the river behind them? They chose the latter, a decision that proved disastrous. At the Battle of Marsyas River, the Carians were crushed. 10,000 Carians fell, compared to only 2,000 Persians. The survivors fled to the sanctuary of Zeus Stratius at Labranda. Yet the Carians rallied. When the Persians marched on their cities, the Carians laid an ambush at Pedasus. In a night attack, they destroyed the Persian force and killed all 3 commanders, including Darius himself. It was a stunning reversal, but only temporary. The end of Aristagoras. As Persian forces steadily reconquered the rebel cities, Aristagoras, the man who had started it all, faced the consequences of his actions. The historian Hecataeus counseled building a fortress on the island of Leros as a refuge, but Aristagoras chose instead to flee to Myrsinus in Thrace, abandoning Miletus and the revolt he had initiated. He didn't survive long. Leading a campaign against a Thracian town, Aristagoras and his entire force were annihilated by the Thracians. The man whose personal ambitions had unleashed years of war died ingloriously in a minor skirmish far from the great events he had set in motion. The Ionian Revolt would continue for several more years, culminating in the destruction of Miletus in 494 BCE. But the consequences extended beyond Ionia. King Darius, upon learning that Athens had helped burn Sardis, famously ordered a servant to remind him 3 times before each meal, "Master, remember the Athenians." That memory would lead to 2 Persian invasions of Greece, the battles of Marathon and Thermopylae, Salamis and Plataea, the wars that defined the classical Greek world. All of it traced back to one man's failed ambition and desperate gamble for survival. Herodotus's account reveals how great historical transformations often begin not with grand visions, but with personal failure, how individual choices can cascade into world-changing events, and how the combination of hubris, desperation, and accident can reshape the destiny of civilizations. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell so you never miss our next historical adventure. We post new content every 3 days.